Call to order today's Select Board meeting, it being Tuesday, May 9th, 6 p.m. in Memorial Hall at Town Hall. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded by Westborough TV. At this time, whoever is available, if you could rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So funny. All right, thank you.
Did we have to announce it's doing this hybrid?
It's not hybrid. It's remote.
Remote, so we don't have to do it.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, do we have anyone here for open forum? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to the first article in our packet, Chapter 269 of the Acts of 2022, the cost of living adjustment for retirees, the Worcester Regional Retirement System. And let me hand that to you, Christy.
Sure. So this was an agenda item in February where we talked about the acts and the option for each community within Worcester Regional Retirement to adopt the acts and to give additional COLA to retirees. And so within your packet is information about the cost of that was provided to you previously by the finance director. But we also invited Kevin Blanchette, who's here today as chairman of the Worcester Regional Retirement Board, to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Blanchette, would you like to?
Mr. Chairman, I may as well. You brought me out of retirement, and I've forgotten what traffic was like.
Yes,
So
it's
I
back.
just made it, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you having me here. Basically, this is a local acceptance provision, which is fairly unusual when it comes to retirement benefits. What happened was last year, the Social Security cost of living increase was about it's exactly 5.9%. And the local retirement systems are enabled by statute to give up to a 3% cost of living increase for their retirees annually. However, the 3% cost of living that is given to our retirees, the public retirees, is capped. It's 3% on the first $16,000 base, unlike Social Security where it's on the entire amount. Okay, so last year during the state budget consideration, amendments were offered to the budget to increase the cost, to allow retirement boards to increase the cost of living to 5%. There were two amendments. One gave the 3%, an additional 2% to the state and the teachers' retirement, state workers and all the teachers. The other amendment would enable local retirement systems to increase the COLA, if you will, an additional 2% for their retirees. Now, this was then sent back to the legislature by Governor Baker, who amended it and put on the local acceptance amendment, figuring that the member towns, the member units of any system should have the opportunity to approve this provision. Now, the past 25 years now, Worcester Regional Retirement, like most local systems, have granted a 3% increase. That is built into our actuarial valuation, built into our funding schedule, which is updated every 2 years. The provision was not accepted by the legislature until November. So we then got the instructions and the guidance from our oversight agency, PERAC, the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission, to how to interpret this. And what makes this very unusual is that rather than a vote of all the member units, of which there are 100 in Worcester Regional, it's only for the towns. So we need 2/3 vote of all the towns in the region. So we're looking at a 34-town vote. So it requires a simple vote of the selectmen. In the case of Westborough, I think you may have discussed the additional cost. We've already given the three. The additional cost for 2% won't be realized by the town until fiscal year 2026. That's the next time we will do evaluation and redo our funding schedule. So at that point, the additional cost for for the town will be $92,230.38, give or take a dime. And then you'll see a 4% increase on that for 10 years, up until the time when our system is fully funded. So that's basically why I'm here, to answer any questions you may have about this. The town of Westborough has 251 retirees in our system. That includes regular superannuation retirements, disability retirements, whether they be accidental, job-related, or ordinary disability, and some survivors or some beneficiaries of deceased members.
All right.
Any
Thank you very
questions,
much.
Mr. Chairman?
Any questions?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, please.
This obviously came out in January, and towns have to take the vote by the end of June. Are you aware of what the votes have been in other communities?
More or less. So what happened was, when we did this, it was suggested that we not disclose like a running tally for a vote, so that no one town, makes or breaks the deal. It gives you all an opportunity to consider the merits of the case. And I might add that this will be retroactive to July 1, which would run concurrent with the normal cost of living adjustment. The 2023 COLA for Social Security, by the way, this year is 8.7%. So I've not seen any amendments to the budget for that. This is the largest COLA that, if it passes, this is the largest cost of living adjustment given to public retirees since 1991, I believe. And it's on a base.
But Christie, to your question, Christie, those votes would be public, though, right? We just don't have them right now. Okay.
And you don't have to take your vote until the end of the fiscal year, so potentially there's communities that haven't taken their votes yet.
And just so if I can, just want to make sure I understand it. So 3% was already what was approved. This allows for additional 2%, so a total 5%. Retroactive to July 1st last year. But then the 4% you talked about for over 10 years, is that because of the underfunded status of the plan today? So that would just be an increase for 10 years, is that correct?
That's a good question. That will fully fund this provision, the COLA.
Oh.
So we're fully funding the COLA already. It's
At 3%.
at 3%, and that is built in. Every 2 years, we do an actuarial valuation, which takes the snapshot of the system's health, if you will, health, considering we do have the liabilities. And we are required by law now to fully fund our system by the year 2036. So this 4% over that time for the next 10 years will fully fund this additional 2%. And it'll go, in terms of dollars and cents, I think is about $3,500 each year. Increase. That's a good question, sir.
Yeah.
No problem. And so, sorry, the second follow-on question, so this 2%, this was not a one-time vote, is the act that this is, so now it opens up to 5% every year, is that what?
No, it's a one-time shot.
Okay,
And it does become part of the base, and that's why we're paying for that over the time, like a COLA would.
okay.
But it's a one-time shot for a 5% COLA.
So unless the legislature takes something else on, it would revert back to the 3%.
Correct.
Max.
And my own sense of things is that you won't see, despite the Social Security increase, I don't think you're going to see another increase in the legislative process. This year, certainly the House didn't have any amendments or any discussion about it, and I don't anticipate the Senate will. There's no free lunch. It is a cost item, and but the legislature felt that it was warranted in light of the circumstances.
Thanks.
Question, so in terms of the long-term funding status, so long-term interest rates are up a couple hundred basis points in the last year. Would you expect, if they remained at that height, that the next time there's a valuation, that would, I guess, reduce the accrued liability, is that somehow factored into the liability of the pension?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, yes, it is. So when we take a snapshot during our actuarial valuation, one of the components is the investment rate of return. So with the past couple of years, we've seen that fluctuate, like a roller coaster ride. But we had the experience 2 years ago of great returns. Where it does double-digit return, 17, almost 18%. Not so good last year. But, we look at it over time. So I'm anticipating that as we start to rebound and the interest rates, are climbing, that we're going to see some relief, if you will, in terms of our funding.
Gotcha, but I guess that's on that investment returns would be on the asset side of equation. The actual accrued liability, is that in any way fluctuate based on long-term interest rates?
No, it's just based upon our accrued liabilities plus the assets and the contributions that people are making. So it has no bearing whatsoever on the unfunded liability.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions to Alan? Are you good? Everybody? All right.
Thank you very much for your time.
much.
It's a pleasure to be here. I love your new town hall. I haven't been out here since that time, and when I started coming out here, Christie was just new
Yeah.
as in human resources, so it's a pleasure to come back.
Well, it doesn't
Welcome
make-
back.
doesn't
And we
make it
apologize for
old
the
now,
traffic.
But that was a nice way of saying old.
Feel though.
Yeah, I'm retired. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
much appreciated. So the question is, are members prepared to vote on this provision? Want to discuss further?
I think it definitely warrants some discussion. I don't know, how much time did we leave here?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. I mean, I guess I'd like a little time to think about kind of what is the overall impact, because I know this is for retirees, but then I think about, current negotiations of current employees. I mean, totally separate, but impact,
Probably.
obviously, taxpayers and, I guess I'm struggling a little bit. I don't quite understand why it's sort of why the increase is being granted. I mean, or being requested, other than it was, you guys are, I look to you guys as our market financial guys. But other than Social Security went up. So is that it? And there's,
And Shelby, I would say the benefit retirees are receiving is not keeping up with inflation. And with, with now 2 years of very high inflation and costs for retirees, this is a one-time bump that will help retirees, better keep pace.
right, and he said 1990, I didn't write that down, 1997 was the last increase, or 91?
91.
91 was the last time this was done.
And they have to be fully funded by 2036.
I believe that's our target
Yes.
to be fully funded. I think that's maybe a couple years before it's required. I think there's a little bit of, leeway baked in there.
And to your question, I do think the liability calculation by the actuaries would be impacted by rising rates. So benefit payments aren't, but I think the future liability, I would imagine,
Oh,
would
yeah,
be
Reduced.
reduced because rates.
because of how it's invested and,
Well, not investments on the liability side, just the way it's valued.
okay.
Because as rates go up, prices,
Yep.
the values go down inverse, and I think, I would expect that when they do the liability calculation, the future liability will be lower based on higher rates.
Mhm.
Yeah, typically, it's what happens. But, I don't know, that's a
And
big deal. It might be, I think where it may impact us, it may be that estimated amount that this carries in the base forward might be less than the number that's projected based on what the future valuation to get the fully funded status is.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have, it's not, our vote is 2% or up or down. We don't have a choice of the percent.
It's either we approve it or not.
Right, yep.
Because the retirement board has said they'll 2%.
Yep.
So. And Christie, just so I'm clear, is the numbers in our package, is that the,
The one, on the first page that
Yep.
Leah had provided. Yep.
yeah. So it's an increase of 92,230 in fiscal year, to just under $100,000.
In
In
26.
In fiscal year
26 when we
26.
fund
Yep.
And 1.2 million total for the end of the schedule.
Right.
Do we have an average impact per retiree of what that would be impossible, right?
No.
I mean, because the range, we
Right.
would know that.
251 retirees in town.
It's, which is based on a calculation. Each retiree obviously is based on a calculation.
Right,
so-
exactly, yeah. So, yeah, okay. I mean, I guess at this point, I would like to see what other towns are doing. I think we should be aware of that. And it's public information, so I do think it would be helpful to understand.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you in that, certainly, we have tried to hold things steady across the board for everybody. And so this would be an exception. So I think maybe want to put a little more thought into it and bring it back at maybe our next meeting.
Yeah. No, I agree. I want to look at it more I think if I calculated correctly, it's about a 1.5% increase on our current if the 92 off the 6.2, is that right? Did I calculate that correctly?
I have to go back.
Like 62,000 would be 1%, so 92 is roughly
Right. Yeah.
1.5.
Gotcha.
But Shelby, to your earlier point, that it's my similar thinking is I think we have to think holistically throughout the town of
Yeah,
what this means across the board.
yeah.
And I understand Alan's piece in
Yep.
inflation, but I do think we do have to think holistically.
Um,
I'm sorry, I'm not against thinking holistically, but as we do, remember that the annual 3% increase only covers the first, I believe you said, 16,000 benefits. So if someone's, retirement pension is, not no idea where they scale, but if someone's retirement payment is $32,000 a year, then the COLA increase they're getting is only 1.5% per year. And it's, we hear about seniors and the cost of living and living on fixed income. This is the income that's fixed.
And so Alan, to that point, is the 2%, he said, is that only on the 16,000 or is that on the full amount?
16, I thought. I think it's on this.
so it says in the letter that's in your packet, it says, as a reminder, any COLA granted is based only on the first 16,000 paid to retirees. And the Worcester Regional Retirement Board previously voted to grant a 3% COLA to the retirees and survivor beneficiaries.
Alan, I didn't understand. Could you explain your calculation again using the example you just gave of someone receiving $32,000 annually as part of their retirement?
So if someone is getting retirement payments of $32,000 a year, and the cost of living increase is 3%, but only on the first 16,000, then it's effectively a 1.5% increase.
Oh, on the whole,
On the
I'm
whole
sorry,
32.
okay,
On the
I missed the
whole.
whole, sorry.
Right?
Yep.
And so you think of someone who's getting 32,000 a year in retirement payments.
Yep.
And getting 1.5% COLA each year, that you're not keeping up when inflation is 3, 4, is only 2 or 3 or 4%. If we were seeing these requests multiple years in a row, I guess I'd be a lot more concerned. But that's not the expectation here. I concur that, clearly people need to think and look at this a bit more, that we should, continue the discussion and vote in a subsequent meeting.
We have 3 more meetings between now and the end of June. So, I don't know if you're looking to know what all the other communities, because everybody has the same deadline.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it would be interesting. Ultimately, our board will make the decision our board feels right for Westborough, and you still need 2/3 of 34, so.
Wait, or is 34 2/3?
34 is
34,
I'm sorry.
51, I
Thank you.
think.
So I'm hearing that you're looking for that data. I guess if there's other information that would be helpful for your next
Yeah.
meeting,
Yeah.
if you can let me know now or, prior to the next meeting.
Yeah, my biggest concern is the overall impact on current employee contracts.
Yeah.
Or wages and salaries, and what that precedent is once, if we do this.
Right, yeah.
And I fully understand what Alan is saying as well,
It's a little bit different because of
It is different,
cap.
there's a cap, obviously the retirees, I understand that, and we do have to balance that as we think about some of the other initiatives that we think about in town that we've set our priority, and
I guess, yeah, for me, it would be knowing then what is the average annual increase for not on the base, but on the average outstanding payment for everybody. If everybody is getting 32, and so this is going to take them from 1.5 to 2.5, then that's
different.
a lot different. So is 16 grand like it? It's,
Yeah,
the
can we get-
I think
majority
that
of
would be
their.
helpful.
If we could get that amount, no names, no nothing, but just kind of
Yeah.
what those 200 retirees.
Yeah, I mean, we can figure out what we can get.
Yeah.
And provide it. I understand what you're looking for.
Okay.
so.
Okay.
I think it's a good.
And I don't know this, are retiree benefits, can they have a designated beneficiary? Like so the retiree passes?
Yeah, so it depends on what plan you sign up for when you retire.
Right,
Yeah.
right, okay,
Yes.
but that is an option,
But
okay.
there are survivor
Survivor,
benefits,
thank
yep.
you, yep. Okay.
All right, any other questions for town manager? Any items? Move on to the next
Yep.
item on the schedule. It is a hearing. Do we need to wait? It's not really.
It's a hearing, we need to wait till.
Yeah.
So we need to wait till.
13 minutes.
No,
6:40.
13
I got
minutes.
6:27. Yeah.
Can we go to number 6?
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know, because we don't have the presenters here, those would take longer.
So 4, 5, 6. So number 6, we're going to jump to review the open meeting law complaint dated April 24th of 2023 from Patrick Higgins, and we will review the proposed response.
Yep, so included in your packet, we received an open meeting law complaint on Thursday, April 27th from Patrick Higgins. The complaint alleges that the select board violated certain provisions of the open meeting law at its April 11th, 2023 meeting. Specifically, the complaint was that we had posted an updated meeting agenda for the meeting, the April 11th meeting, and that the posted agenda did not have a timestamp indicating the date and time the agenda was posted on the website in violation of the open meeting law. That was the alleged complaint. In review of that, we did find that we were actually in compliance with the open meeting law. So included in your packet also is the response, or the draft response from, that we reviewed with town council. What happened was our official posting place is the town website, which if you go to the front page, there's the calendar where we post all of our meetings. You can see that the revised agenda we had there did have that timestamp. It appears that the one that Mr. Higgins was referring to was actually on the select board page, which is just there as a point of information and not the official posting place. So I did forward to you the proposed response.
Just a suggestion, is it possible to, because I was just going out and looking at the select board's page for this as well, and it actually states tonight on the top page that this meeting was on May, not on the agenda, but on the link on the webpage, it says May 10th. So I'm just wondering, today's not May 10th, right? So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can just use reference links back to the actual agenda that's stamped to the other pages, such as the select board's pages, from now on, instead of having two separate posted locations.
Not currently, but with the new website, we would hope to.
Okay,
But
terrific.
that's not, regardless, that's not the official posting page.
Right. Just I could see people being confused in general by it, so.
So I would move to authorize the town manager and the board chair to finalize the response to the complainant.
Second.
Any further questions? All those in favor? Roll call. Yes.
Johnson, yes.
Welch, yes?
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes. 5-0, 5 being present.
Maybe we can reach out and tell him I'm no longer the chair, so he can put your name on the
I'm
complaints going forward.
fine with that. Fine with that. All right, next,
8 maybe?
11?
request to that's as good as any. Request to reappoint Judith Meltzer as Registrar of Voters. And I guess just briefly for people's edification, the Board of Elections exists due to Mass General Law, Title 8, Chapter 51, Section 15. It consists of 4 people, the town clerk and 3 registrars of voters. This 4-member board is required to have at least 2 of the major political parties represented equally. The terms are for 3 years and run from April 1st to May 31st of a calendar year. Ms. Judith Meltzer has been the incumbent registrar of voters representing the Democratic Party for several years and is seeking reappointment. Any questions or?
I'll move to reappoint Judith Meltzer as the Registrar of Voters representing the Democratic Party for a term to expire March 31st, 2026.
Second.
Roll call vote. Alan?
Edward, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Welch, yes?
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes. 5-0, 5 being present. Thank you.
We do
Doing
community
12?
preservation?
What do you want to do, the minutes?
Oh, minutes.
And it's number 12, all right. Do I have a motion
I
on the
would
minutes?
Move the approval of the meeting minutes of April 25th, 2023.
I'll second.
Any questions on the minutes? No? Roll call vote. Alan?
Edward, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Welch, yes?
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes, 5-0.
Now, Shelby, your recommendation, you want to go to that?
Community Preservation Act, I feel like that's fairly,
8 minutes?
Yeah,
Feel like that's 8
I think
minutes?
that's pretty
Okay.
straightforward.
All right.
Jim,
Go ahead.
okay. So at the town meeting, the town approved a community preservation committee bylaw. And so, as the board's aware, the bylaw speaks to the composition of the committee as being one member of the Conservation Commission, one member of the Historical Commission, one member of the Planning Board, one member of the Recreation Commission, one member of the Open Space Preservation Committee, the Westborough Housing Authority, one member, and one member of the Affordable Housing Trust, and then 2 members to be appointed at large by the Select Board. So as we're waiting for the Attorney General's response related to the bylaw, we wanted to go ahead and reach out to all of those committees, and we just wanted to put it on the agenda here to give it visibility that those opportunities for those 2 positions are available. So that I had recommended that we publicize it, and that the deadline would be June 9th, so that you could appoint at your June 27th meeting in time for the beginning of the fiscal year.
Yeah, I fully support that. I think I worry a little bit about, because it feels like forever since, it was originally passed, and then this process, which is, it had to be what it was. So I'm wondering if there's, I don't know if it's possible at our next meeting, if we could have a brief kind of like a presentation for the public, or if there's another way to do that to let them know, for those who are interested, because it's a brand-new committee, what this committee is going to be about. I mean, I think there are other ways to maybe work with Westborough TV to get that word out. We could possibly do that too, but I'm just wondering if we should take, 5, to 7 minutes here to do a brief presentation. I mean, I'm willing to take that on, if the board wants to. I just worry that people are going to be like, what is that committee? And
So like other committees, when we advertise it, we advertise information about it. So, I mean, you certainly can do that, but
I don't know.
I'm not sure, you haven't done that before. So if you wanted to just have us advertise it specifically with the bylaw attached, you wouldn't have to do a presentation at a meeting. That's up to you.
well, maybe there's some other information. I mean, I think the bylaw's long. I think it's, I mean, when I think about like the building committee, the golf club building committee, there was a lot of visibility around that. People knew what was going on. I just, maybe it's me, I just don't think that there's a lot of visibility to what this committee is and why someone would be interested in it. But
I mean, I understand. I mean, the golf club building use committee, I mean, it's right there in the title. Like, you know exactly what you're getting into. There is more to this. Would you be comfortable if we did that at our next meeting, had a short presentation, but still tried to stick to these deadlines, or would you feel we'd need to extend them?
no, I mean, I think maybe the compromise is just providing some, I guess, very basic language in the committee posting, not, I mean, the bylaw is very important. I agree with Christie, but maybe just some like kind of nuts and bolts lay language of what this committee is, some links to other committees and the work that's done. I mean, I think we have enough material to pull from when the initial act was passed that we could reference. I just,
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, I think
we're doing
that
much to it.
compromise makes sense, and maybe, and I don't know whether it's even highlighting specific portions of the bylaw, or as you said, kind of giving a summary
Yep.
explanation, I
Okay.
think would be
okay, I'm fine
helpful.
with that.
That sounds good. Since we are looking to stick to the recommendation in terms of the time frame that Christie's come up with, would a vote be necessary on that, or we're just
No,
saying, okay?
you don't need to vote.
Okay. We're just
Sounds like
collectively,
Shelby's gonna work with
collectively nodding our heads, okay.
Christie and team on
Yep.
the posting.
Patrick, you got any thoughts? Alan, you good on that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm good, sounds like a good plan.
Okay, so what we have here, plus a few minutes on the calendar at our next meeting to go over it.
Yep.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Shelby, did you
Nope.
want to do that, or?
Sorry, so you're going to do a presentation and an advertisement?
No, I mean, I think, so when is our next meeting? I don't even know the date.
23rd.
I mean, if we can give 5 minutes, just for the, I don't know, you guys decide. I don't-
No, I don't think it hurts
More information's good.
to drum up.
So I apologize. That was the purpose of tonight's agenda item,
Oh.
was to talk about this committee and give light to it. So
Okay.
we don't have a formal presentation. If you want to talk about the duties, or if you want to do it again next meeting, that's fine.
I would recommend that we just have a couple slides at our next meeting, 3 to 5 minutes max, just to let folks know. It gives them a week or so more to apply,
Yeah.
submit their letter of interest.
I'm good with that.
All right.
Yeah, and I think it's, us finally signing on to this as a town, I think is fantastic, and so, I'm fine with this, talking about it all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, and I think the other, just my final point is, I think the other designated seats are from committees that are very aware that this is coming, and there's been conversation among those commissions and committees of this, whereas the at-large population, I don't think it's top of mind.
Right.
But maybe it is.
They may
Right.
not have all the details. So
Right,
why not
right,
give them
yeah.
a little, brief
So-
overview? Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll put that together, and I can also work with Christie, obviously, with that.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
1 minute, maybe number 8.
You can do the contracts.
Oh, okay. All right, so it's,
For CBAs, that one?
Yes.
Yep. Number 10?
okay. All right, so at the February 28th, 2023 meeting, the board approved a memorandum of agreement for 3 successor contracts with the Police Patrol Union and Clerical Union. Agreements were subsequently funded by a town meeting, and now the final step is to fully incorporate the language into the respective collective bargaining agreements, which are effective for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025. Discussion or motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll recuse myself, as my wife is a member of the clerical union, and I'll step away from the board for you to discuss.
Yes, Patrick, thank you very much.
I'll make a motion to approve the 3-year agreement between the town and the New England Police Benevolent Association, or better known as Patrol Officers Union, for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025, as presented.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Alan?
Edinburgh, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Marshall, yes?
Keo, yes. 4-0, 4 being present.
And I would move to approve the 3-year agreement between the town and the Service Employees International Union, Local 888, better known as Clerical Union, for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025, as presented.
A second.
All right, no further discussion. Alan? Roll call
Edinburgh,
vote.
yes.
Johnson, yes?
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes. 4-0, 4 being present. All right. Welcome back.
I need to stretch my legs.
Okay, so the time being 6:41, we will now go to agenda item 3, liquor license hearing for Torito Westborough LLC DBA Torito Mexican Restaurant at 291 Turnpike Road.
I move we open the public hearing.
Second?
Roll call vote.
Edinburgh, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Welch, yes?
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes. Alan, thank you.
We had sent a letter to Torito asking them to come in for noncompliance related to the holding of their liquor license. That specifically, they did not have a valid certificate of inspection. It expired in January. And then they also did not have a valid certificate of liability insurance, which is also required under the liquor license laws, and that also expired in January. So we had tried to reach out to them. We were successful when sending these letters, and so happy to report that today Torito did have an inspection, and I know you have both Deputy Fire Chief and also the Community Development Director to speak to that. But what we did receive was an update from the Fire Chief, which I handed out to you previously, stating that they had a couple of things outstanding on their inspection, which I'll let them speak to. And then also, we did receive the certificate of liability insurance. We did also mention in the agenda item form as an aside that there were some fire code violations which have also been paid. So I don't know if Deputy Doucette, if you just want to speak to what's outstanding in the fire chief's recommendation.
Sure. Good evening. Stephen Doucette, Deputy Fire Chief. Chief regrets he couldn't be here tonight, so I'm standing in for him. So actually, the town manager kind of summarized it all, so I don't have to speak on that. The fire code violations were due to the sprinkler system running through so the specific violation is failure to maintain a fire protection system in accordance with the Massachusetts Fire Code regulations, the comprehensive fire code. So specifically what it is there's a sprinkler system. They have an intact sprinkler system, but part of the system runs through the refrigerator and to the freezer. And per the code, they are required to prevent that system from freezing. So it was brought to our attention by a sprinkler contractor. It wasn't that we went out there and discovered it. A sprinkler contractor last year sometime brought it to our attention. A permit application was filed, but nothing was ever done with it. So upon follow-up inspections, we found that they weren't compliant. We issued a warning, which is also called a non-criminal fire code violation. We issued a warning on January 24th of this year. We went out there on February 27th, found that they hadn't corrected it or in our opinion, made any attempt to correct it. They stated they were in contact with a fire sprinkler company, but we didn't see a permit pulled or an application filed. So on February 27th, we went out there again, found the same issue. A $100 fine was issued. Explained the situation again, that they need to have somebody look at this system. It may be okay, but they need an engineer or a sprinkler contractor to look at it. So we went out there, the last time we went out there was April 24th, so we gave them 2 months, and we still found that they weren't compliant. So then we issued another fine for $500. So that was on April 24th, and of course, this is about 2 weeks later. The fire chief and the building department, Bill Helslett, went out to inspect the restaurant today, and they did talk to a fire sprinkler contractor who said he's been hired and he should be able to get the job done within 30 days. So the chief said he was confident that that was going to be taken care of. There are a couple other minor issues, one being the hood, the hood system over the where they cook. There was a part that needed to be replaced, but it wasn't like the hood was covered in grease or anything like that. So it did have it was marked with a tag noted to be deficient, but it was repairable. Again, the chief spoke with their contractor who takes care of the hood, and they said the repair will be completed by next Monday. And we have confirmation from the town hall that, as the town manager addressed, that those other issues were taken care of. The fines were paid in cash. So, and I have the copy of the receipt. If there's any other questions, I'll.
Oh, thank you.
Questions.
Thank you. So, and it sounds like the recommendation is to just leave the hearing open until June 13th, with the expectation that these items would be closed before then.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
No?
Would you like a comment?
Sure.
Yeah, so I think this is actually to the managers who I think are here, so thank you very much, for coming. I guess I would just say that let's not let this happen again. It's pretty frustrating. I know it has to be nerve-wracking for you to have to come tonight, where you'd rather be at the business doing what you would normally be doing, not sitting here before us. And it takes a lot of time and resources from our departments who are, in the business, certainly of public safety, so they're doing their job. But, basic communication avoids all of this. So please don't let it happen again, because my patience for it will be thin.
Got a question.
Sure.
I can talk about
Yep, come on up.
Is there any way we
Good.
could get, how are you today?
Come on up and introduce yourself, please.
How are you today? My name is George. I'm a part owner over there. But the issues with the alarm and the sprinkles, the report, I've been calling the owner since last week because I now own the building. I live in the building, so I don't even have access to the sprinkle room. And he just been ignoring. So I called him last week, and I got a hearing next week. They're gonna take my license away.
Right.
And he just laughed. I told the chief this morning, I'm like, this is not my building. I'm not, it's not much I can really do.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys know that building runs to one alarm system, because it's two buildings.
Yeah.
Where it runs to the same alarm, and it has the same sprinkler company. So the issue was in the beginning, that's why the couple sprinkler heads, they've not been changing. I got a partner in the beginning, but we didn't get along really well. He knows about that problem. I don't know anything. So we don't get along, and he left and not in a good terms. So when I find out the problem, I start digging on it, but they come out as a big job. Like I explained to chief this morning, it's like $40,000. They gotta, I don't know anything about a sprinkler system, but they gonna, I guess it's a wet system, and they don't want that anymore in the coolers or in the freezer, which I understand.
Yeah.
But I hired, as soon as they told me I hired an engineer, but they take forever to do they said they gotta draw some plans and explain everything good to get the permit done.
Sure.
So I don't know if there's any way how I can force my landlord to give me those, because I know I need those inspections before the end of the year.
Right.
So it's May already, and we're looking to, I just gave you the inspections for last week.
So I guess I would ask, Christy, do we know, I'm not looking at the letter here, do we know who the letter is actually sent to when we send it? Is it sent to like the manager, or is it sent to the landlord?
The letter
Just
that we
send
sent
it to
about
me.
the liquor license, we sent it to the liquor license holder, and that's
Yeah.
the only people we can hold accountable related to the liquor license. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we understand your frustration and appreciate that you're jumping on it, but it has been ongoing for several months. So, I guess in the future, that January 26th date or whatever date ends up on your next inspection, it's really incumbent on the license holder to make sure that you're getting those things done in
Okay,
advance. So,
all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, and certainly appreciate that it's not, you don't have control of all of that, so I appreciate that explanation.
Right.
I think that anytime you can be proactive, communicating with whether it's the town manager's office or the fire chief or whoever.
Yeah, he gave me
building-
his number, and he
Yeah,
told me like, if this happen again, just call me, just let
Our,
me know.
community development director, I think the more you can say, hey, look, I need some help, we want to support you as a business being here, and we
Thank
want you
you.
to be successful. So, but we can't help if we don't know about it,
Right.
and if there's not a response. Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, can I ask
No,
a
go
question?
right ahead, yes.
So, thank you, Shelby. You made a lot of the points I was also thinking as well. But just to go a little bit deeper into that question about the letter, I'm just curious. We discovered this because of the liquor license issue and are able to enforce it as a under the liquor license issue. If this was not a business that was serving liquor and this issue had come up as a defect in the sprinkler system running through a freezer area, how would, in a multi-unit building where the landlord is really responsible for that fire suppression system, should we not still notify the landlord who, because I'm just thinking if this was take any other business that doesn't have a liquor license that has their sprinkler system going through a freezing area And we discover that through a third-party sprinkler management company, we would have never known except for, or we would have never been able to enforce this except for under the liquor license. So I'm just curious how, because to me this is a, for lack of a better word, a building code violation in the sense that there's a defect in the way the sprinkler system's been set up. So I'm just wondering, should it have not been a notification to the landlord as well, not under the liquor license separately? Because they are responsible, to make sure that that building, the whole building, regardless of what businesses are in there, meet the code.
Fred Lenaro, Community Development Director. I guess I can address that best I can.
Thanks, Fred.
So generally, whether it's with a liquor license, so we do some inspections on assembly buildings too, or if we issue a certificate of occupancy, we do an inspection. We don't generally get involved in the way the lease is set up. So if it's a triple net lease, for instance, the owners of the restaurant may be responsible for all maintenance and portions thereof. So if we started to get involved in who has to take care of what, we'd probably get balled up forever. So I don't know whose responsibility this would be. So it depends on how their lease is set up. The cooler is internal to the space, so I suspect that, albeit they may not think so, that they probably are responsible for this. Access to the sprinkler room could be an issue, but again, it goes back to the lease, so they should have access to anything they need to have access.
Yeah.
That building has been kind of a pain. As you know, Durrani's kind of been, they're part of that building too, and the way that was set up, they've been kind of fumbling through their way too. So we've had issues with that general building. To answer your question though, we don't get involved in who's responsible for what, because we'd get in the weeds of their lease and we'd be there forever trying to figure out that legal determination, if that makes any sense.
No, definitely that scenario I'm sure does exist, and I can understand why you're saying what you're saying.
When we go in and do inspections, we do that, I mean, we have to inspect the businesses. And
Right.
so these inspections are happening so that the businesses can retain whatever license. It's not just for liquor licenses.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the carrot that the town has, is the license.
Right.
In terms of when these inspections are happening.
Right, I guess I'm just thinking of a scenario where there is a business there that doesn't require a license. They have a freezer environment, I don't know what they might be doing, but, I imagine there's a scenario where that could exist, and if I'm understanding you correctly, since we're not privy to the contractual arrangements between the landlord and its occupant, we wouldn't get tangled up in that, but to me, it's a safety issue regardless of that legal arrangement, so.
Correct.
We were fortunate, it sounds like, that we were notified through this third party in the event that no matter how the notification happens, and no matter what that legal arrangement is, I would expect that there would be some communication. If I was a building owner, I would want to be aware of that change that's going to happen. I mean, you just mentioned a $40,000 renovation or modification needs to be made here. I would imagine that's a significant, maybe modification to the building or whatnot that needs to occur. And as the owner of that building, I'd want to be aware of that, I guess, is my point. So just something, I don't know where to take this from here, but perhaps something to think about as we notify in the future as to should we be also making the landlords aware or the building owners aware. So.
I guess to Fred's point, though, we don't know whose responsibility it is.
Right, but that's really irrespectable. It's a safety issue. So over communicate is, in my opinion, might be a better thing than potentially under communicate on it. So.
Well, so I don't want to belabor the point too much, but so some buildings are operated through a property management company. Some are operated directly from the owner, and some are from the inhabitants of the building.
Right.
And we have combinations of that throughout town.
Sure.
So sometimes, again, not knowing how their particular building is set up, you can get in the weeds on who's responsible for what and who we get signatures for. So generally what happens with a building permit, the owner has to authorize the work. So for a building permit, specifically, we check that the owner has given either the tenant or the contractor permission to do the work. So they'd be, presumably, if they sign the permission, they know that something's going on.
Yeah.
And they would follow up that way.
Yeah.
That particular building has been kind of for lack of a better way of saying it, a problem child since I've been to town. So we've been dealing with issues at that particular building by both tenants. When this tenant originally moved in, they did a boatload of work just to get that facility up to snuff, if you will, because it hadn't been, you know, meticulous maintained, let me put it that way. So they've already put a significant amount of money. So I don't know what the agreement's been with the partners. That could be something that's shaked out since they've opened, but,
Yeah.
you know, and that is unfortunate for them if they've had a falling out with the management and stuff, but, you know, that's kind of, hard for us to track.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm not looking for us to track that. It's just more along lines, safety issue, over-communicate. Maybe that'll help resolve these issues more quickly in the future. Just a suggestion there. So thank you, Fred. I appreciate the input and knowledge.
Absolutely.
So,
I would move to allow,
it's an open
sorry.
meeting.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Alan.
So with respect to the certificate of liability insurance for liability, have we received that from the insurance company yet?
Yes. Seal said it was dropped off today.
And does that certificate show that coverage was actually in force as of January 19th?
Yes. It's valid.
It does?
Yep. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
it's fine now.
So I just want to make sure there wasn't a gap where the restaurant was not properly insured.
No, it's.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all set. Did you hear her, Ellen?
Not completely, but I saw the head shaking yes.
Okay, yeah, no, there was no gap. Sheila verified no gap.
It's acceptable.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alan. Ian?
Yeah, I'd move to allow Torito Westborough LLC, doing business as Torito Mexican Restaurant at 291 Turnpike Road, to retain the active liquor license and to continue this hearing until June 13th at any time, Sheila?
I think it has to be the same as it now, so 6:40.
At 6:40 PM.
Second that?
All right, any other questions or comments? Roll call vote. Alan?
Edward, yes?
Johnson, yes?
Welch, yes?
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes, 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, item 4, Waste Management Exploratory Committee Presentation and Recommendation. I hand it over to the town manager.
The Waste Management Exploratory Committee that the board had appointed has put together their recommendations. They come to you with a charter and timeline, so this is along the timeline. And so I'll let them make their presentation. As you all know, the transfer station as we currently use it is going to be unavailable to us in the same way effective July 1st of 2024. So that we found out after they began their work, so that sort of accelerated their work. And so they'll present their recommendations and then we'll move forward with next steps.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, hello, please introduce yourselves.
Nathan Askew, 55 Fisher Street.
Katie Curtin Mestre, 26 Linda Street. Also present is our committee members, Lauren Berstetti and Becky Dolan, as well as Irene Cognan from the DEP. So we got full force here for you guys.
Good.
Thank you.
I see Jennifer Sullivan in the back there, as well from Board of Health.
So yeah, we're practically the whole committee's here. All righty, so here is our update to the select board, and just want to keep track of time. How much time do we have?
As much time as it takes.
Okay. Well, it is my son's 25th birthday, so
right.
don't worry, I'm gonna be succinct.
Good.
So just a quick review of our charter, and we got started at the end of the summer 2022. Our charter is to provide a comprehensive report and recommendation to the select board, which is what we're doing today, with the aim of reducing total residential town waste In alignment with the Mass DEP waste reduction goal, the overall goal for the state is to reduce waste by 30% by 2030, which will be upon us before you know it. How to go about that? Increasing recycling and composting. Want to make a special point about composting. All of the research shows that 20 to 25% of the waste that is thrown out is organic waste. And in a lot of ways, that's a really, big opportunity for us as we move forward with our new program to kind of divert that food waste from the waste stream. We also want to make sure to educate our residents so we can decrease the contamination of the recycling and the composting streams. These are the committee members and roles. I won't list out everyone's name. I introduced a lot of the people who are involved, and we've had a really active committee and great advisory support from Christy and Jen. So what's the work we've completed to date? We've done a lot of research on effective waste management practices. We've benchmarked Westborough to other towns, both to the benchmark towns and to the state as a whole, thanks to the information provided by Irene from the DEP. We've looked at priorities for evaluating waste management alternatives, and when you look at waste management, just consider that there's two elements of waste management. The first is your actual program for picking up your residential waste, and then your second option is how you go about funding that, and I'm going to cover both of those. And of course, today we're presenting our options to the Select Board. As Christy mentioned, the work of this committee, we really had to really kick up our efforts to get to the point to present to you today, given that we know that the transfer station is closing on June 30th, 2024. So just one thing to just point out here is there is a Massachusetts waste ban law. All of the items that you see listed here, many residents may not know this, but none of these items are supposed to be put into the waste stream. So this is worth pointing out because as we develop our new plan going forward, our comprehensive solid waste management plan, we have to account for, as a town, for the proper disposal of all of the items on this list. One that I would just kind of point out for fun that a lot of people don't know is textiles. Telling my husband all the time, you cannot throw the socks away. You have to dispose of them properly. We looked at the benchmark towns. You guys are familiar with the list. This is the list that you guys look at all the time in the Select Board. So we did research for all of the benchmark towns. What you see here is a little bit complex. I'll walk you through it. First, you'll see what the different towns are doing for the handling of the trash and the recycling, what cart size, they offer. And what you'll actually find is that the cart size really, does matter. The smaller the cart size for the trash, the more you're gonna encourage the residents to, do the recycling and divert from the trash. And then you see here the recycle schedule. Just for purposes of comparison, we did put the Westborough program on this chart. Obviously, we know that the Westborough curbside program is private, but we wanted to put Westborough on here for completeness. So a couple things to point out. Most common trash cart size is 64 gallons. For the recycle schedule, it's a pretty even split between weekly and every other week. And what we actually found out from Irene at the DEP is that in terms of the amount of waste that is recycled, there is not really a material difference between the weekly and the every other week. Certainly the weekly is probably more convenient for the resident, but it doesn't necessarily change the amount of waste that is actually recycled. And this is how all the towns are handling the waste ban items. Of course, as you saw on that other slide, there's a lot of stuff on the waistband items list, what you'll see is that a lot of towns have both a combination of a curbside program and a drop-off program. So if you take, let's say Shrewsbury and Northborough, who are our neighbors, they have curbside trash and recycle. They have curbside bulky items for a fee, bulky items, sofa, just a big appliance, stuff like that, bulky items for a fee. Shrewsbury has yard waste, but they're combining their curbside program with a drop-off program to handle all of those waistband items. And it's interesting to note that both Northborough and Shrewsbury have a contract with the dumpster divers. Multiple towns use the dumpster divers. It's open, twice a month for people to take those waistband items. So as we think about the go-forward plan for Westborough for the waistband items, we will likely need a program that's both curbside and drop-off. And the main thing to think about for the drop-off is it's not like today's drop-off where your drop-off has to be like open every day. There's plenty of towns that have it only open, on the periodic. And then most of these towns have hazardous waste days. I would say Lexington is probably the most, forward-thinking, because they're offering the hazardous waste days, once a month, which is giving the most options for the residents to dispose of hazardous waste properly. And if you step away from the benchmark towns and you look at it statewide, you could see that, it's, drop-off, I guess, is the most common, followed by curbside, combo programs, and private subscriptions. And then underneath there, you see which of the towns have pay-as-you-throw. And I'll just be going a little bit more into pay-as-you-throw in the next slide. So as we looked at how do we evaluate the different programs that Westborough should consider, we had a lengthy discussion as a committee, and these were the priorities as we ranked them. The most important is, of course, waste reduction, taking into account the 30% waste reduction goal of the DEP. And also very high is total cost of operations. Total cost of operations is a comprehensive concept that includes the cost to the resident in terms of what they're paying, also what's the cost to the town, for running the program, in terms of any cost that the town is bearing in the tax base, or also the administrative cost. All of that is in that big concept of total cost of operations. Medium items, important, recycling and bulky item accessibility, being able to add organic waste, because like we said, 20 to 25% of the waste that's going out is organic waste, and having a program that is convenient to the community, that the residents are satisfied with and they have a overall good experience. And it's also worth mentioning, even though it's low, overall mileage efficiency is important and worth considering, because we also have like a climate action plan. So we want to consider that any plan that we pick for picking up our waste, we want to hopefully not, be contributing too much to emissions more than necessary. So picking up the waste in an efficient manner. And do we want to wait for the questions at the end? Okay. So this brings us to the options for town solid waste management. Got 3 basic options: curbside, drop-off, private subscription. Curbside, the pros of curbside is you can control your costs. Most towns who have a curbside program are locked in on 3 to 5 year contracts to just kind of minimize, costs going up really high from one year to the next. Most of these contracts have like an inflation increase, but there's a limit on how much they can just charge you more, from one year to the next. Curbside is efficient, right? Because you have one program, one hauler, picking up all the trash in the town. You know, on the cons, the town needs to manage the contract and handle the payment for the program. So that's a con there. Drop-off is what we have today, but we're not gonna have any more. Pros of drop-off is it really is a program that accounts for everything that you need to throw away. But certainly the cons for Westborough, especially as our today transfer station is closing, you have to have a site, you have to get it approved, you have to have the setup costs, you have to staff it. So that kind of makes it very difficult for us to consider standing up a new drop-off program. We did talk about going the private subscription route. Private subscription is just kind of like the town is not involved in anything related to residential trash. Every resident picks his or her own program. Certainly that is the least costly for the town, but as Irene showed us, it's actually the most costly for the residents. The towns who have private subscription, those towns, the residents are paying way more. You also have the challenge that trucks and trash are out all week long, because you could have 3 different haulers in town. They're all going on the same streets on different days of the week. People are putting out their trash at different times. And even though it's private, people will still call the town when they have trash problems. So just on that front, if you guys are familiar with Hudson, you know, Hudson had a private subscription curbside for many years. Residents were paying quite a bit of money for that program. And so Hudson now has a town curbside program. The town isn't actually paying for it at all. It's completely paid for by the residents, but it's a better program for the residents in terms of what they're now paying and getting a better program. So going to funding. First, there is the program, and now we're talking about the funding. How do you pay for the program? When you look at these program funding options, we are showing them here each separately, but of course you can combine them. So first off, one way of funding is in the tax base. So it's in the tax base. You have one bill to pay the hauler. The tax budget is higher. You know, certainly perhaps with a tax-funded program, the resident may have like less incentive to reduce because the trash bill is just kind of hidden in the overall tax bill for the resident. There is a flat fee. In a flat fee, it's similar to the water bill where you get a bill, you know, every quarter. A lot of towns can typically handle this by adding the bill for the trash as part of their utility software. So in our case, perhaps in addition to the water bill. There's no taxes with this one, but you do have to deal with the billing. And again, what's the incentive of the resident to reduce trash? And then, of course, there's, you know, pay as you throw, which I think we have considered as a town. This is before my time, so I cannot comment on prior looks at pay as you throw. It is a proven program to reduce waste. It is very much a utility model in the same way that if you use more electricity, you pay for more electricity. You use more water, you pay for more water. Trash, the more trash you produce, the more you pay. And certainly there is grant money available from the DEP to implement pay as you throw. Certainly on the cons, there are the setup costs associated with pay as you throw. And there are certainly perception issues that need to get addressed. There is a perception that it's more complicated for the residents if you have pay as you throw and you have to buy special bags. You know, some residents don't like the fact that, you know, having to go with a particular bag limits your choice. As I've said, you can combine these options. So we've certainly seen towns that have curbside trash for what, the trash that you go in the cart, that's part of the tax base, and then you only have pay-as-you-throw for the excess trash. So that would be kind of like, I think in that picture I showed you. So for example, this picture could be anything that's going in the cart is included in tax base, anything extra you pay for the pay-as-you-throw. So these options, tax, flat fee, and pay-as-you-throw, you know, can be creatively combined. It's not an either or. I also want to point out that pay-as-you-throw, a lot of you guys may consider that pay-as-you-throw, as you most commonly know it, as it's implemented in Worcester, people put the bags out onto the street. That's not the only way to implement it. Plenty of towns have a pay-as-you-throw where you still put your pay-as-you-throw bags in a cart. So there's flexibility there. Thankfully, we're very thankful to be working with Irene Cogden from the DEP, and thanks to Jen for applying for the technical assistant grant. She's working really closely with us as we go through this process to develop our Go Forward program, and she can also advise us on what grants are available to us to offset the cost of our new program. And so just some additional considerations before I get to our recommendations. As I kind of already mentioned, both the cart size and pay-as-you-throw help to reduce waste and the program costs. It's kind of hard to see this in this chart because it's tiny, but you can see each of these is showing how much trash is generated per household based on if they have pay-as-you-throw or the size of the cart. So over on the far right, 95-gallon cart is actually generating the most trash per household. And then over on the left, you have a pay-as-you-throw, drop-off, and curbside generating the least trash. As I already mentioned, we got to have a plan for the waistband items, and it's not likely that all of those waistband items can really be picked up curbside, which does point to a drop-off of some sort, even if it's only a couple times a month. And there are grants available from the DEP, especially grants for pay-as-you-throw. We can apply for those grants now, and we can opt not to accept the funds if for any reason we decide not to do pay-as-you-throw. And that's worth mentioning because I think there's some grants coming up immediately due, I think in the June timeframe, that we can apply for. So that brings us to our recommendations. So our recommendations as a committee is the town investigate a town-wide curbside solid waste and recycling program and seek proposals from haulers. We already kind of did some initial work getting proposals from haulers, so we've already kind of done this one time around, but this time we're going to do it obviously with a more sense of seriousness given the situation. Our second recommendation is that the town's contract with Wheelabrator, we have a long-term contract with Wheelabrator for trash to energy, should only be available for haulers who are part of the town-sponsored program once the new curbside program is implemented. What does this mean? What this means is we could still have, and there's nothing to prevent private haulers from being active in our town once we have a town-sponsored program, but those private haulers, they don't participate in our program. They can pick up the trash. They got to take care of it themselves. They're not included in our Wheelabrator contract. We're also recommending that the town offer curbside composting. Interestingly, although not a benchmark town, Irene pointed out that Grafton is already taking a step in this direction. And this would not preclude also offering local drop-off points. And the local drop-off points is something we should definitely investigate for the people in the, in the apartment complexes, multifamily dwellings who aren't going to be served by the curbside. And the committee is also endorsing pay-as-you-throw as an option, and we're recommending that the town hopefully investigate the ways that it can be implemented. Which brings us to our timeline. We're here today in May to recommend to the Select Board to move forward with the curbside RFP, to pursue options for the waistband items in parallel, and to apply for any relevant grants, which I've kind of referenced already. Hopefully in June, issue the RFP, get it back so that the town has time to develop the funding options, including pay-as-you-throw. Most likely want to count for soliciting community feedback, and certainly that would line up for a town article to be drafted and submitted and presented. Again, if required, it may not actually be required that any of this have to go to town meeting, but we want to be mindful of town meeting if that's required. And then the new program would obviously need to commence July 1st, 2024, but it could certainly start earlier. Certainly, if you look at the charter of the Waste Management Exploratory Committee, it could be argued that our charter has now been concluded, presenting our recommendations to you. But members of the committee are certainly really, strangely enough, we have a lot of enthusiasm for waste and want to continue to work on this topic as we bring it to the next steps. And so with that, we'll pause for any questions or comments.
Would you like to start?
Sure, I'll give it a go. Thank you. This is a fantastic presentation, and I really appreciate all the work that the committee put into this. It shows, so I really appreciate all of the information. The only question I can come up with as I was looking at this was really around, is there any data that you discovered in regards to other communities' satisfaction of these different programs? You know, there's obviously a concern as we transition from what we have today to something new that we could see people not very happy with it, or perhaps disposing of materials in places that they should not be disposing it because they're not. And I'm just curious, any data on that, anything you guys might have heard, discovered in your conversations with perhaps other communities?
Yeah, I think anytime transfer stations get closed, people are generally not happy, we have found.
Yeah.
But I would say, and Irene can certainly chime in, I don't think that the DEP has seen that if you implement pay-as-you-throw, that you're going to find a situation, you know, where people are throwing stuff like now in the bushes, or now going to the, you know, throwing the trash, you know, behind the movie theater.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a common concern if you go to pay-as-you-throw, but often not seen in practice. Irene, anything you want to say on that front?
No, you're great. I'm Irene Condon. I'm the Regional Recycling Coordinator, the MAC for Central Mass, with Mass DP. Any change is always hard. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
Especially a transfer station, people are always connected to that. If we can bring community events also, like sometimes events bring people together so they have time to talk. They're going to miss their social interactions. That's always just their biggest thing. That I don't think they really care about the actually dropping of the trash or the recyclables. It's about the camaraderie. So maybe we can plan for that.
Everybody show up at the, you know, at the end of their driveway at the same time. Right? So, yeah.
For events, or we're talking about that can be something wherever they're taking their electronics or something, we can maybe make a table or something where people can talk.
Yeah.
And have political times for signing petitions and things like
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's good to see that these programs have been successful in other communities.
Absolutely. Depending on the types of carts, it's always, some people like one thing, and I have others, you know, that bigger carts, you're warranting for more. People like to fill things. We're Americans. If you give us capacity, we'll find a way to fill it. And then other people are like, there's literally a small grocery bag in the bag, and why am I paying for such a big cart? What we have seen is there's 155 communities that are pay-as-you-throw, and we continually ask them all the time and every year, have you seen more illegal dumping? And they always say no. If they have illegal dumping, it's mostly mattresses, bulky items. But if you have a town program for that and people know about what the answer is, most people want to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting, back to your comment about the size of the cart. I think it was Lexington had the smaller cart, and they were still on a 2-week cycle. I got to figure out how those people manage that. That's, to reduce down and then only put out their cart every other week that's pretty
I think
impressive.
there's only about 2 communities that do that are
Yeah.
every other week, but then they have organics that I
Yeah.
think are done weekly.
Which probably helps reduce that and then
Yeah.
push. So, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Questions?
Yeah, a couple ones. One is my stupid question of the day, but at the beginning in the for the waste ban, white goods,
Appliances.
appliances.
Yeah, they used to be white, now.
These always be white. Okay, yep.
Chrome, silver.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Then the second one is related to the recommendations, and I didn't see any recommendation regards to the options for funding. I'm assuming that's one that will be left. Was that left?
That's the last one, Ian, that the committee's endorsing pay-as-you-throw. We're endorsing that as an option and recommending that the town investigate ways it can be implemented. We debated at length, like, what was the proper wording of this? And we really felt that pay-as-you-throw is endorsed as an option was the kind of best way for us to make that recommendation to the town.
Okay.
But specifically to the actual recommendation of funding, we had a discussion about that being something that we would do internal to staff once we get the costs from the RFP.
Okay. So I guess the question was, yeah, some of it
So
was,
it's both.
and I think as you said, you can do both, like the picture you showed of some paid by tax, some overflow is pay as you throw, so that will all be part of the RFP then, is looking for quotes and.
Right, so you would get the quotes and then we would make a determination. I mean, obviously, we'd have to look at what we currently pay in our tax base, whether or not we want to move to an enterprise fund, if that makes sense, if we need additional staff, if we manage our own contracts. So there's really a lot to be worked out.
So that would be the, sort of the internal analysis once we get those RFPs back to say, what's the overall cost to implement this program? And because there's a town cost, like staff, et cetera, and then there's a, town
Yeah.
resident cost, yep.
But I guess that point, I guess you leave the RFP open enough in that cost to propose various options?
Well, it's not, maybe I'm missing what you're saying.
I
It's
can-
not, the
I think
hauler's
I
not
can
gonna.
address this. So Ian, when you put out for the RFP, one of the things that we'll say in the RFP is that haulers need to be aware that we may implement pay-as-you-throw. So we want any hauler who responds to know that pay-as-you-throw is on the table, but, they can reply either way. They just need to know that we may go with pay-as-you-throw. Because again, the way to think about it is, first there's your program that you're offering to the residents, and then how you're gonna pay for it.
Perfect.
And I think, unless you go with the private option, the haulers, there would be, there's a guarantee of payment coming from, I'll call it probably a centralized source, that being the town, whether it's, if you look at the taxes, the town is paying like one bill versus, through enterprise, it's funneling through multiple, but then ultimately they're getting paid, presumably from the town. But, so, those details really have to be kind of worked out.
And the other thing I would add is that when you put the proposal out to the haulers, from the haulers' perspective, probably the most important thing they need to understand is, are you gonna go with a cart or not? If you go with a cart, there's a higher level of automation, which potentially enables one person driving the truck to pick up the trash. If you don't have a cart, and let's say you're putting out the bags on the curb, then you're in a program that requires 2 people to operate. So when we put together the RFP, just understanding whether we're going with the cart versus not is probably the most important thing the haulers need to understand, and then kind of spelling out to them that we are looking at pay-as-you-throw.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Just a quick follow-up question on the process. Do we as a board have the authority to initiate the RFP directly, or do we have to go to town meeting to get that authority?
We could just initiate, we don't even have to, the board doesn't even have to authorize it. We can just put out an RFP because you're not accepting anything until we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
I can't see Alan, so I don't know if he has questions.
Yeah.
From
I do.
Alan, please go ahead.
So, and my question is more for the next phase. If we're going out, to bid, I guess my question would be to ask that our DPW bid as well. And then I know that there are some communities, Natick is one example that found, Natick has a pay-per-throw program, but the hauler is the DPW. They bought or leased trucks, they added some staff to handle it, and they're managing it that way. And it appears to be a lower cost in some respects than some of the other programs. So just a consideration to think about as we move forward.
I think one of the interesting points that you raise, and this is something that has been discussed with Irene, and I think this is also where Irene will be advising the town, is that as we have a new, solid waste management program, we could have potentially a different model than what we have today. So for example, one model might be that the overall governance and policy setting for waste management could continue to be with the Board of Health, but the actual management of any program, even if the program is working with a hauler versus taking it, in-house, that could be, with the DPW. And again, there's a lot of kind of options on the table as we go forward in terms of who does what between, the different parts of the town.
To add on to Alan's question, I think, if I know where you're headed here, Alan, I'm just curious, is there any data that says, hey, if we go with a tax-based system versus a pay-as-you-throw system, and I forget what the third option was there, and then in the communities that we've looked at, is there any idea of what the average increase cost is, whether it's in the tax or whether it's in a pay-as-you-throw to the average resident or average household of, let's say, 4 individuals? I'm just curious what, trying to compare apples and apples here for an average household.
If I understand your question, I don't know how you would know that because it would be dependent on how much is already in your tax base, right? So if you're trying to understand what the increase would be, we would really have to look at it on an individual level.
So you're saying in some communities you might have there are pre-existing costs in the tax base. So how do you extrapolate that out?
I'm not saying how. I'm saying that it would be hard to compare because if one community, if we go to say the same program as another community, but we had more in our tax base currently, we couldn't. That the increase in that other community would be higher.
I guess all costs associated with it, regardless if it was in the tax base already.
I thought you were asking about the increase. So I'm saying the increase you wouldn't be able to identify.
I'm saying the cost as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, yes, I was kind of making the assumption that all of these communities at one point or another made a jump from something to a program.
Right.
But what is their cost in their tax base now using the tax base program versus pay-as-you-throw program? Is the average household spending $500 a year, $200 a year? What?
Yeah.
Just curious, because
so each town is so different that you have a contract with Wheelabrator, so that makes you different than even the next town over. That does not have the contract with Wheelabrator, so they're paying a lot higher. They might be paying $120 a ton, while you guys are paying $75 a ton for disposal. Mm-hmm. What I do, and I'm here to help you with that technical assistance, is when we get your numbers. Right. With the RFP, then we'll space it out and say, this is what it could look like, A model, if you put everything in the taxes. Here's B model if we used a 64-gallon cart. Here's C model if we used a 35-gallon cart with an overflow bag. Here is the other one if we used all pay-as-you-throw in another cart or separately and no carts. So I give you about 6 options, and sometimes internally we discuss it, and then we'll come back here with like 2 or 3.
Yep. Great, that's
exactly. So that, but I can't give you those numbers.
No, that's very helpful.
So different, and I'd say I have some communities, and it depends on when they started. My own town is still like $220 for the whole program. That includes the curbside program, the drop-off collection, the hazardous waste program, but our contract's just gonna come up in another year. So we're end of 5 years, so we're still, 5 years ago, you know, we're reaping that reward versus a new contract was $450
Right.
per household.
Sure.
But their distance, how many people they're picking up, you know, was it automated or do they have like 6 people, you know, that are working?
Right.
So everything's very different.
That,
So
that's going to be
why
very
we need
helpful.
to know your numbers, and that's
Sure.
where the first step is. We can't give you those numbers until
Right.
we go out to bid.
That's
Thank you.
exactly it. And the other piece of this is also that utility approach. So with pay-as-you-throw, you know, there may be some other cost, but you're approaching it as however much I waste and just use that waste stream, then
Right.
I'm paying more. So there's also that element of looking at the cost. It's not just a pure, there's much greater variable. You know, I might start off high
Sure.
and realize, oh, wait a second, I can really, because I'm going to compost, I'm going to do some other things, and my personal cost could go way down.
Right.
So.
Very-
But
very
we got to do the
helpful.
RFP first,
Yep.
so.
Thank you.
Did Alan have more questions? Again, I can't see him, so,
No, I'm good.
okay.
It's just I want to consider that the town's its own hauler in this, to see if that financially works out better for the town and for the residents.
Thank you.
I just wanted to follow the comment, just say thank you to the committee for working on this and putting this forward, and apologize for the surprise you got in the midst of it with the with the news about the closing of the transfer station. But I think this is, I think the work that you put in is great. I think the recommendations make total sense. And look forward to it moving forward. Into the RFP phase, so thank you.
Yeah,
to
great.
all of you in the committee.
Okay, thank you. I have a,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So I had a question. I think way back at the beginning of the committee, right before all this happened, part of the reason the committee was created was that Westborough's figures in terms of recycling and what was going through the waste stream actually, didn't look good. And I understand as part of this process, did you learn something about that and why the figures were what they were?
It's a kind of a bit of a rat hole topic, but suffice to say that I would say probably one of the main reasons that we probably have high numbers, and in this case, we're not different than other towns, is most towns that have like a pure drop-off program like Westborough's, have similar numbers to us. But I just honestly, I really also think that,
We'd rather look
sometimes the
forward,
most important
honestly.
thing is to look forward, and that's
Yeah.
what we're focused
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, and seriously, because I think that really it's about, there's a 2030 goal, and we need to reduce, and we know where we're at now. And so while comparisons are certainly helpful, it's, there are a lot of different factors that go into all of this, because you have private, you have, kind of people that are doing transfer station only, you have people that are private and transfer station, so a number of different factors, and then you have sort of you have the Waste Connections or Harvey, and then you have Wheeler Bridge. So what I would say is the forward look of, here's where our benchmark is today, and we want to get closer to that 30%, to contribute to the state's overall goals is where we need to be, so.
Got it.
Actually, can I add to that? So we did, in meeting with Ben Harvey, we had a conversation also about the fact that when Westborough's trash is taken to the transfer station, it's weighed and attributed to Westborough, whereas in other communities where there's single-stream recycling, you could have a resident in another community throw something in that's considered dirty recycling, so it gets pulled out of the actual recycling, but is not attributed back to the community. So it's counted different.
So- Yeah, sorry, yeah.
It's a rat hole.
Yeah, it's a rat,
Yeah, I
Wondered
thought it was
So our
more
numbers
just
may
sort of how
not
it
be
was
quite as bad,
calculated and,
our numbers may be not quite as bad, but I think just where we've really tried to spend our energy is looking forward and how do we get better?
Yeah, my point, was more that the numbers looked bad, and I knew they couldn't be as bad as they were. Like, there was just something off about them. I mean,
Well,
the good news is if, for any of you who've worked in sales, what you need to do is set expectations low and overachieve. With our numbers, we can only overachieve.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
So, we'll just-
I think the only other thing I'll say is just, I think, so it's really, it's, the board's role to kind of move forward, working with Christie here, and, but I would encourage the board, once we get, the results back, again, the committee members are knowledgeable and ready, and obviously we have Irene on as for her time and through the grant to tap into that, because there's a lot of information and experience, so it's great to have everyone working together.
Excellent. Hey, thank you very much for your hard work. Appreciate it.
Thanks, and big thanks to everyone on the committee.
Happy birthday to your son, too.
Yeah, I know. We won't sing.
Do you want the motion? Would you want to do it, Shelby, or?
No, go ahead.
I would move to accept the plan as presented by the Waste Management Exploratory Committee and request that the town manager act on the recommendations as presented.
Seconded?
Second.
Okay. Alan, roll call vote?
Edinburgh, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Welch, yes.
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes. 5-0. Thank you very much.
Nice job. Yay, progress.
If we could request that we take up the 2 DPW items so that
Sure.
our DPW director can get to the Conservation Commission meeting.
Oh, sounds good. So that is,
7 and 8.
item number 7 is amend the traffic rules and regulations to establish a municipal school zone on Eli Whitney Street. Oh, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. So the state offered an opportunity for towns to apply to receive a free set of speed signs combined with speed feedback and flashing lights that you'd see in a typical school zone. So we applied for that, received them. A condition of receiving them is that the town establish a school zone where you're going to be using those signs. We currently don't have a school zone designated at Fales, and so that's where we're proposing, that's where we proposed in our application to install them. So tonight's request is that the board support the establishment of a school zone for Fales on Eli Whitney that will allow us to accept these signs and then install them.
Great. Any questions? Is there a requirement for the size of the school zone, or?
It's typically 200 feet from a drive, the first, so if you're coming, let's just say you're on Eli Whitney, you're coming from West Main Street, it's typically 200 feet in advance of the first driveway. Little leeway there, so like on Eli Whitney itself, you're coming up over a hill, so we would adjust that to recognize the terrain and make sure the line of sight is visible for the sign, before you get to the top of the hill, and then you're kind of coming down the school. So, but 200 feet is the general rule of thumb.
That's the exact question I was going to ask, the line of sight over the hill. So, very supportive of
Yeah.
it. Thanks, Chris.
And did I see it also monitors the speed of the cars?
It does. So
Passing.
it has the speed limit sign itself, and then it has one of those speed feedback signs that will tell you how fast you're going and slow down or whatever the case may be.
Excellent.
So it's amazing we don't already have it. I'd love to make a motion.
Very right.
So I move to approve the location of the municipal school zone for Fales Elementary School located at 50 Eli Whitney Street, as shown on the plan dated April 5th, 2023, and further to amend the traffic rules and regulations to include identification of this zone.
Seconded?
Roll call vote. Alan?
Edinburgh, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Welch, yes.
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes. 5-0. One down.
Thanks for doing
One
that.
quick question on this, not on the motion itself, or on this, but do we have these, or is there a need to have these around other schools as well if we don't have them? I'm just trying to think of where else. This is a particularly important one because I think of the line of sight issue. But I'm just curious, is there other?
We do have them at on Fisher Street in front of Armstrong and Gibbons,
Okay.
and on East Main Street in front of Hastings.
Okay.
Not the same sort of signs,
Yeah.
They eventually will be upgraded, updated, because they're pretty old, but
Yeah.
yes, we do have them already.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next, interdepartmental transfers.
So we're here to not request more money, but just shift money inside of our snow budget. So we really essentially are moving money from buckets, so we're asking to move money from our wages account into our expenses account. That funding would be used to purchase, to basically restock our salt shed, which we do every year at the end of the season. A couple of benefits to that. One, primarily, we want to have salt on hand, and if there's some shortage or lack of availability in the fall, we don't want to be sitting with an empty shelf. And we also buy our salt under a contract, and that contract's renewed every fall. And typically, the price goes up, and so we can buy it now at a price that's likely to be less than it will be in the fall. The second piece that we'd like to fund is we have one truck that has some deferred maintenance we pushed off basically to get us through the season. We're now through the season. We need to fix this truck before before next season. So there's some money out of that $50,000 that we're going to have to pay for that deferred maintenance. So we have some money in the account now. It's about $3,000, and we're asking for another 46 or so to be moved from wages to expenses.
I'll move to approve the interdepartmental transfer to move $46,000 from snow and ice wages to snow removal expenses.
Seconded?
All right, questions? Roll call vote, Alan?
Edinburgh, yes?
Johnson, yes?
Welch, yes?
Marshall, yes.
Keo, yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
I thought for sure you'd find a pun in there on that one. I moved to shovel the.
See, you should have done it.
I was thinking about it. I was thinking
I
about it.
wasn't that creative.
Any chance we can get Alan back up?
Let me ask Chuck.
I know. It'd be nice to see him.
Yeah, I feel bad.
Sort of feel like he's Oz, you know?
I've been there. We've all been there.
We have.
Almighty
I need you certified.
That's right. That kind of sounds like him too.
I know. Welcome.
Okay. See, while we're figuring that out, the senior needs assessment preliminary presentation.
So as the agenda says, this is really a preliminary presentation. We received the final report of the senior needs assessment on Thursday of last week, with the intention to have a full public presentation next week on May 16th at 6 o'clock at the senior center. Folks who need any transportation to that can call the senior center to schedule that. But what we wanted to do was, at this meeting was to discuss some of the major themes that came out of the report. So the report itself is 91 pages. There's some really good data in there. It actually starts with a good executive summary, which is also available to folks. We have made it available throughout the town. I don't know if I'm taking away from Kim's presentation. So we have hard copies of the executive summary are available throughout town hall, departments, the senior center, and the library. There's also full copies of the report that you can look at in the selectman's office as well as the library. And all department heads understand that upon request, we would print one for folks who are interested. Also available on many places online. And then there's flyers around letting folks know about the senior needs assessment presentation with a QR code that will take you right to the report. So really hopeful to be sharing this as much as possible. Really excited about the results. So Kim's going to share this. We did also do a brief presentation to the Council on Aging yesterday and had some discussion about it, which was a really good sort of jumping off point for this report.
So again, tonight, we just want to offer some high-level findings. The deep dive will occur next Tuesday, again, 6 p.m. at the Senior Center. So the project, just as I think you may all recall, but for everyone's benefit, this was following the strategic plan in 2018. One of the identified follow-on projects to that was to further explore senior needs in our community. So once we got through COVID, because there was a significant portion of this work that really was better suited for being able to meet with people in person, we went to town meeting in March of 2022. The project was funded and the work began over the summer when we entered into a contract with UMass Center for Social and Demographic Research at their Gerontology Institute. So work began in the summer. The initial timeline was for us to resume or to have a report just about this time. The timeline included several. Well, let me step back. We'll get into that in terms of the methodology. But again, what we were looking to do was to better understand the needs of our older adults and build awareness about issues related to aging in the community. So really the intention here is that we now have, as Christy mentioned, a 91-page report with detailed findings from several sources, and hopefully this will help us as we plan, particularly in light of our increasing proportion of our population that is 60 plus. So one of the components of the report and the project was for the researchers to pull together a detailed demographic profile for Westborough's older adults. So as you can see on the slide, in 2010, 16% of the town's population was 60 and older. That number increased with the 2020 census. It's currently about 20%. And the projections for 2030, it will continue to increase to 26%. The other thing I will mention, so this is number of residents, but when you look at households, about a third of all households have an individual in the household over the age of 60. So in terms of the other components of the research that ultimately fed into the findings, there were 8 key informant interviews with officials in leadership positions. 6 focus groups were ultimately conducted. We initially intended for 7, but one of the challenges with individuals who are caregivers, the ability to it was just scheduling challenges to meet in person. So ultimately, the research team proposed doing individual interviews with those folks so that they could better, it better suited their schedules. So we were happy that we were still able to get their perspectives and include those in a way that was less disruptive. Lastly, the component that I think many in the community are most familiar with was our survey that was mailed out to 5,514 residents, age 55 and older. The response rate of 29% yielded 1,633 responses. Interestingly, it was sent by mail. It was also available online. Only 9% were completed online, so the vast majority were sent in. If you look at the report, you'll see reference to a lot of not only boxes being checked for those types of closed-ended questions, but any of the open-ended questions garnered a lot of response and very helpful and useful insight. So again, with that much, there was a lot of data entry. So as that work proceeded, the interesting thing when you look at the report, the findings from focus groups, from key informant interviews, and from the survey, there is a lot of similarity across in terms of similar thoughts, opinions, and perspectives. So I just wanted to highlight some of the key findings, and much of this, as Christy mentioned, it's I believe a 6-page executive summary that's very useful and helpful. So I'd encourage, if folks don't have time to dig into the full document, I think you'll get a lot out of reading those 6 pages. So in terms of key findings, cost of living and availability of downsizing options are challenging in this community. So in terms of individuals who currently own homes and might be looking to downsize to either a smaller home, and this also includes individuals' interest in downsizing to affordable apartments, condos, townhomes, they expressed the view that there were very limited options within the community to do so. And I think not surprising, the increased housing-related expenses, including tax increases, are challenging for older residents who may be on fixed incomes. Another key finding, transportation is a concern and can be problematic as our residents age. 24% of the population aged 80 and over do not drive. The issues that can create for those individuals in the absence of reliable transportation otherwise, it makes it challenging. Doctor's appointments were reported being missed. Depending on who they're relying on for transportation, we'll see this theme in the next slide when we talk about caregivers. It further challenges caregivers. So transportation is definitely an issue for many of the respondents. And then one of the implications of that is beyond things like getting to medical appointments. Limited transportation options may also just generally decrease our older residents' engagement in the community, which is something, there was a statement in a section talking about these are often residents who have a real interest and have the experiences that are really beneficial to many of our community organizations. So finding a way to ensure that they are engaged and remove any barriers is critical. Kind of an untapped resource. There's a lot of discussion and identification of needed support due to physical or cognitive conditions as our residents age. And specifically, there were many questions asked. There were questions asked, as well as information through the focus group, about specific needs of caregivers. Nearly a third of the survey respondents reported having been a caregiver within the past 5 years. One of the things that was identified with that is many of those caregivers are the younger, older adults, and many of them may still be in the workforce, and the challenges of trying to provide the care as well as juggling their own commitments, as well as those individuals themselves may have physical limitations or other limitations. Some of the things that were cited were the need for additional informal supports as well as formal support, including, in-home services. Another finding that there is an uneven awareness and understanding of the senior center, so particularly among those under the age of 70, and it's the younger, older adult group. So while over half of the respondents 70 and over indicated they had participated at the senior center compared to 24% in their 60s, we really have an opportunity, and there were suggestions in terms of programming ideas to attract, maybe things for recently retired or soon to be retired individuals, as well as, if we continue, some of the other potential opportunities to enhance individuals' participation and enjoyment of the services offered through the senior center relate to the physical, both the location of the building and the physical condition of the building. Respondents identified challenges related to the location, both in terms of being able to access that, limited walkability for most, as well as challenges even just pulling out of Rogers Road onto Route 30, making a left-hand turn. It's challenging. Additionally, physical constraints related to the functionality of the space and the desire for programming that the space may just not support was identified. Respondents also identified a preference for programming that's of the nature, educational opportunities, day trips, travel, personal growth and enrichment type of programming. And then I think this is the final one that I've identified here is an overarching theme was more a desire for improved information and communication. And that really means many things. There was discussion and identification of having resources available, using social media, using online tools, because many of our seniors do use those technologies, but also recognizing that for many, mailing things or having printed copies delivered to the mailbox is just as effective. We also heard about, under communication, a suggestion, this is getting into suggestions now, but one of the respondents suggested an ambassador program so that people in the community have a better sense of what's available, both at the senior center and then other town programming. So there was a host of issues as well as suggestions around opportunities to improve communication. Okay, so that brings us to next steps. So as we've said 1, 2, 3, or 4 times already, next Tuesday, May 16th at 6 p.m., the research team from UMass Boston will be there to really dig in, deep dive of the report and the findings and answer questions. That will be in-person attendance is welcome and encouraged, but it will be live streamed by Westborough TV as well as recorded for later viewing. The other question that I suspect many individuals have, how will things move forward once this is out there now? People are hopefully reading it. The next step will be for, at the staff level, for staff to sit down, go through the findings, and develop and prioritize recommendations with the intent of coming back to the board at a future meeting. And then I just wanted to end by putting up the slide that's this is available. It's been widely distributed, but it's just the flyer for the event next week.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Saving them for next Tuesday?
I look forward to next Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think I'm looking forward to that. I think the one thing I've heard from folks who have read the report and are still going through it is how will the community provide feedback on the report? So, like, they gave feedback to create the report, the assessment, but there is a keen interest that I think we all should be aware of as what is the community's feedback mechanism as this goes forward. And I think there are some obvious ways, town meeting, as different participation, open forum, there are lots of things, but I think we should be certainly keenly aware of that. And some improvements, if that's the right word, might just come through a town department, right? So they just would be implemented if that was something. So there wouldn't necessarily be community feedback, but we should just be mindful of that because that is the number one thing I've heard.
Yeah. Hopefully we can hear that folks can participate Tuesday to at least start having that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's probably similar to other reports that we've received where there's some things that we can do internally and make small changes. Certainly lots of things that would likely require presentation to this board or to the town meeting. In terms of feedback to the actual report, this is the final report based on the data that we received. And I think that, we look forward to hearing more about all of that and how, how it was crafted. I just cut my mic.
Yeah, no.
I guess I'm done.
Yeah, no, and everyone I've talked to has been clear that they're not looking to change the report, but they just want to respond to it, and really I think almost kind of enhance it with building on those ideas. So, yep.
Excellent. Alan, comments?
No, I look forward to a session next week. I think the report in many ways is an eye-opener about really getting good feedback from a significant component of our population and how well the town is serving or underserving those needs, and ways and direction that we can look to improve that. Some of which doesn't necessarily require a lot of money or investment, and some that will require some creativity, and some that will definitely require some funding.
Yep,
I just want to thank everyone. I mean, almost a 30% return on what was a pretty long survey. But I think it's great, and I actually was really surprised at the number of paper responses versus online responses. I think it's also sort of indicative of the age and even how we think about communicating with folks, so.
Yeah, excellent point.
Noted.
Yeah, no,
I was an online respondent.
yeah. No, I was too,
Noted that I'm
but,
over 55.
yeah. Yep. But even as we think about things as
Yeah.
common as QR codes, I mean, it's so, we can all grow and learn from this, so.
That's where COVID helped us, so all the restaurants had those QR codes.
Right.
Made me figure out how to use them.
Yeah, right.
Yes. So one more time, reminder, next Tuesday at 6 o'clock at the Senior Center, this will be presented in full.
Do we have a sense of how long the presentation, like, what are you guys estimating? Is it like 2 hours, an hour and a half?
I'm thinking it would be an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah,
Okay,
depending on the number of
Questions.
questions.
sure, yep,
discussion.
okay, thanks.
All right, again, Kim, thank you very much.
Great.
All right, so if I have this correct, I think we are up to the town manager report. Is there anything else folks
That's what I
see
have.
on the schedule? Town manager report.
Without delay.
Just following up on the Regional Dispatch Center, as the board is aware, in the community, the town of Southborough, in early April, voted to opt out of the regional dispatch agreement that was signed. So we did go back to UMass, the consultant that had done the initial feasibility study, and asked them to update the report so that we could understand it better. That updated report, which looks at a regional dispatch center that includes just Westborough and Grafton, is available on our website, as is the agreement that we previously signed, which includes Southborough. So this will come to the board at a June meeting, as it did when Hopkinton chose not to move forward, so that you can consider moving forward with the town of Grafton. And Grafton will also be bringing it before their board in
Christy,
June.
where is that on, I get it from you. Where would folks find that information on the
It is
website?
on, we just
Yep, I appreciate that.
So if you go to, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
That's okay, no, take your
If you go to
time.
the Select Board website.
Yep.
On the left side, there's the links, the blue
Mhm.
links, and it's Regional Emergency Communications Center.
Okay,
So
so
that,
left-hand menu,
yeah, so
okay.
that includes a
thank you.
photo of the site. I'm looking at it right now because Owen did it just before I came up here. A photo of the site, as well as the two documents I just mentioned and the presentation that was made to the board.
Thank you. We often refer to, it's on the website, and sometimes I think it just helps.
Yep.
So, thanks.
Emergency Assistance Shelter, last meeting, the board, in collaboration with the school committee, as well as myself, the chiefs and superintendent, sent a letter to the governor and lieutenant governor. Lieutenant governor did reach out to me, so we did have a conversation about sort of the statewide issues and the support of homelessness, really just making clear Westborough's concern, willingness to be a partner, but Westborough's concern about equity in terms of supporting that. And so there was some additional data that DHCD was asked to share with us. And so, the additional data, it looks like there's approximately 16 communities supporting, maybe a little bit more, the homelessness with hotels. But just so we're clear, there's about 55 communities out of the 351 that are supporting the entire homelessness issue across the Commonwealth. So just continuing to stay informed, appreciate the Lieutenant Governor reaching out and having that conversation, and then continuing to talk to DHCD and other members from the state every other week. And again, as I've mentioned, the delegation is on that call, which has been, really great to have their support, as well as folks from the schools who are able to discuss some of the concerns that they may have. Looking at the MassWorks project, specifically the Otis Street project, as I've mentioned before, that project was originally estimated to be about $6 million through MassWorks, MassDOT, and Complete Streets. We were awarded $4.5 million. towards that project, and then the board had awarded a local match of $250,000 of our ARPA funds, leaving us with about a $1.25 million shortfall. And obviously working towards that project, understanding that there could be increases just related to inflation. So we have been pursuing additional funding sources and having ongoing conversations with our funding partners, and happy to report that MassDOT did amend that $2 million award to $2.5 million. So working towards that, getting there. The department had updates. The Board of Health wanted us to know that the CDC and FDA have made new recommendations regarding a spring booster shot. I'm going to read this so that everyone is clear. The new recommendations allow individuals 65 years of age and older who have received a single dose of a bivalent vaccine to receive one additional dose at least 4 months following their initial bivalent dose. Additionally, individuals who are immunocompromised who have received a bivalent COVID-19 vaccine may receive a single additional dose of a bivalent COVID vaccine at least 2 months following their first dose. So important. This will be up online, but also just important to follow along in terms of what's being recommended related to COVID. Every year, the Metro West Health Foundation conducts a community health assessment. We're asking residents to fill that out. The survey takes about 10 minutes and is anonymous and is available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So the deadline to fill that out is June 1st, and that is available on the website, and at the Board of Health website, on the Board of Health page of the website. And then we've also applied for the Recycling Dividends Program grant through DEP and expect to be awarded. The fire department, on April 28th, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health performed our annual licensure inspection and evaluation of the fire department's Emergency Medical Services Division. That's conducted by DPH. The fire department received a near perfect evaluation and expects to be fully relicensed by May 31st. Also, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is ending the public health emergency related to COVID-19 on May 11th. As part of the process, the fire department, at the direction of DPH, is required to update our current infection control policies to mitigate the risk of transmission within the community. So the department's working with the Westborough Public Health Department to help determine when enhanced PPE should be used to prevent illness amongst not only the first responders, but also the community. The fire department has seen numerous high acuity calls over the last month. On some of these calls, we have seen successful use of defibrillators and exceptional delivery of CPR by citizens. So we always encourage members of the public to attend any of the CPR or AED courses offered by the fire department. In economic development, on Friday, April 28th, the EDC hosted the Year in Review awards reception in the Great Hall. It was a very successful event. Secretary Howe, the Secretary of Executive Office of Economic Development, was there to speak. Was a great speaker, and then we were able to recognize 6 businesses, so Racks Architectural Shelving and Support Hardware, Play Now, Cha-Cha and Beans, Ascend Elements, Westborough Connects, and Yeoman's Ice Cream. And then at our meeting on May 2nd, we voted to award, through the Business Assistance Grant Program, awards to Learning Express, Max Cricket Sports, Swansky's Bake Shop, Honeydew Donuts, Coffee and Pie, and Harmon's Wine and Spirits. The Conservation Department has a lot going on, so I'm not going to read all of those things, but they're working with the schools. They're busy on the town property that we've purchased over the last couple of years, working through that grant that we had been awarded for the Zero Ruggles property. They've also received back the Chauncey Lake study, so we'll come back to the board and just give you an update on that. That was a long time coming. Working with the Hockomock Pond Study Committee, getting some technical assistance from UConn for that work. They're looking at their bylaws, regulations, and then working through some other projects that are happening throughout town. The Public Works Department had 2 project proposals will be reviewed by Mass DOT at the TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program. So one is a $2 million Safe Routes to School project for a shared use path along Fisher Street, and the other is a $9 million East Main Street project for Flanders and East Main improvements. And then if the TIP If they're placed on the TIP plan, the projects would be slated for construction in 2027. They're doing a resurfacing of Flanders Road, and then, so that's underway, and then they've identified additional roads that will be resurfaced. Despite the recent wet weather, water restrictions are in place as of May 1st, and we do have our new water restriction bylaw, which is still with the Attorney General being reviewed. But there was information sent out to residents and business owners. There's been the installation of the new bench at Memorial Cemetery, and then the DPW will be represented at the environmental fair by the tree warden Kyle Grendel, who will speak to ongoing tree planting initiatives. Lots going on.
Thank you very much. And finally, we have issues and correspondence of the Select Board. We'll start with a volunteer.
Sure. I have nothing tonight.
Well done.
All right, we'll just move down the table. I have two things tonight. So the first one is that the Westborough, Sustainable Westborough's having the Westborough Environmental Fair this Saturday. The guest keynote speaker will be at noontime, and the event or the exhibits will open up 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. The keynote speakers are going to be, let me just pull them up here.
Impressive lineup.
Yes, I just wanted to get the right thing in front of me. So the keynote speaker will be, or topic will be climate feedback loops with Melanie Wallace, Emmy Award-winning producer, formerly with PBS Science and Series Nova. At 2 o'clock will be Generations for Change, Insight on Climate Change from the Mill Pond School Student Panel. At 3 o'clock will be the Conservation of Native Pollination Systems by Dr. Robert Giger, Assistant Professor of Biology at UMass Dartmouth and the founder of the Beecology Project. And then at 4 o'clock will be a Beginner's Guide to Navigating Chickens by Megan Riley, who specializes in agricultural education with 4-H and UMass Extension. And then additionally, I just wanted to let the board know and the community know that I attended the Decarbonization Communities and Campuses conference last week with a few other members of Sustainable Westborough. It's a fantastic conference hosted by the Power Options and the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership, also known as NEEP. I guess the key takeaways I took from that conference is, and I attended all of the affordable housing portions of the conference while others attended other sections, so I don't have all the details from what they heard, but I think the resounding message that I got from that conference was there's a lot of federal, state, and other programs that the community can take advantage of that cover things like our residential, our commercial, things for technical assistance, et cetera. To name a few was the Inflation Reduction Act. We'll be learning more about that in regards to funds that might be available to us. And then additionally, there's a Better Building Challenge, which our affordable housing community or programs might be able to take advantage of. So a great conference, learned a lot, and I will say it was well attended. I saw folks from many different universities and communities in attendance, so thank you to all.
Thank you. Ian?
Sure, I just have one thing, just as an update on my role in the Land Prioritization Committee. We actually met for the first time in a long time on May 1st with our new Conservation Director playing a key role in really kind of what I'd say kind of refocusing and restarting the committee. So that was encouraging. We had full attendance at that meeting. The takeaways from that is some work for the town to do, so the staff to do, and we'll be reconvening in about 2 months to bring the committee back together as we really kind of formulate how we're going to move forward with that. But I think we got some great ideas from Jennifer's past experiences, and I think it invigorated the committee and kind of set us on a course that we feel good about. Still some open questions that we'll work through as a committee, and but looking forward to kind of moving forward with that, and we'll provide updates as that comes along. And that is all I had.
All right, Ian, thank you. Alan?
Yes, just really quickly, thank you to Westborough Connects for a great series of events. I know some were postponement we had this week as far as Westborough Unplugged, as well as the sponsors and all of the participants. I attended a number of different events over the course of the week and this past weekend, and it was great to see the turnout and the involvement of the community in an important effort to just bring this all together as a community. So thank you everyone for that.
And thank you. I was going to mention that as well. And if you enjoyed Westborough Unplugs, you have one more opportunity. Tomorrow night, they are doing Book It to Bay State. That got rescheduled from last week. It is tomorrow at 5:30 at the Bay State Common. So please, if you have the opportunity to get over there, I recommend it. And with that, I will take a motion. Oh, let me see. We have here.
Okay. Give me a second. I forgot I was up.
Shirking duties.
I know, I forgot I was, get right to it, hold on a second. Here you go. I move to enter an executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Department of Public Works, Firefighter, and Police Patrol. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, RE Ferris Development Group LLC versus Town of Westborough, Lax Media LLC, and Lax Media MA LLC. Worcester Superior Court CA number 2285 CV 01281. And under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, RE Town of Westborough versus Westborough SPE LLC, Worcester Land Court 19 TL 000768. And under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, RE 129 East Main Street, Town of Westborough versus Westborough Retirement Residence, LLC, Worcester Superior Court docket number 2185 CV 00292. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, RE residents of Westborough Station, or Northland TPLP LLC at 100 Charlestown Meadow Drive, Worcester Land Court case number 22MISC 000445-DRR, and under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A7, to act under the authority of the Select Board to approve executive session minutes of April 25th, 2023.
I declare that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the board's negotiating and litigating position. The board will not be reconvening in open session after the executive session. Could I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Alan?
Edinburgh, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Welch, yes.
Partially, yes.
Keough, yes. Thank you, Westborough TV. Have a good night.